from the heart of the city too busy to hate. A progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hi, thanks for listening. Weekdays, 8 a.m., 4 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice via TuneIn, wherever you podcast. Later in the show, State House candidate, House District 29 here in the state of Georgia. That is a red district, but you got to have a blue option on the ticket if you even want to have a chance. And Scott Soracco is giving Democrats a chance in House District 29, so we'll catch up with him in a little bit. Sometimes I feel as if I'm screaming into the void. Does anybody else have that nightmare where you need to scream, but you don't have a voice? Like you panic and you don't have a, like, that is one of the scariest things in life, right? As a pundit who speaks from the left, I sometimes really feel like that's the case. Like, I have been saying this for years. I was saying it in the midst of us recovering from the post-pandemic inflationary, I mean, just at its absolute worst, when we were dealing with 7, 8, 9% inflation, and everybody was blaming Joe Biden. It was screaming into the void. No voice, it felt like. It's not his fault. President Biden, it's not your fault. You need to say it's not your fault. Here's why it happened. I'll tell you how I know. What I'm saying is rock solid, rock ribbed fact in a little bit. First, President Guyliner, Mascara, J.D. Vance on with Brett Baer on Fox News.
Last thing, should the American people be ready for more increased prices, especially at the gas tank, considering that this does not look like it's going to resolve very quickly as far as the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, you know, the president said, Brett, that yes, gas prices are higher. Yes, energy prices are higher. First of all, they're higher from a baseline where we've never had the terrible energy prices that we had of the last administration. So we come at this from a position of strength. But, Brett, absolutely, we know the American people are hurting. That's why that we're negotiating so aggressively to try to get the energy prices to come down. We're going to keep on working at it. I do think that we're in a place where we've accomplished our objectives. We can start to wind this thing down. I'd much rather wind this thing down with a big successful negotiation. But regardless, the president said this is not going to go on forever. That's never his intention. And I think because of that, the energy prices, while painful, are not going to be around forever.
Yeah. I mean, no, of course they're not going to be around forever, but they didn't have to be here at all in the first place. But also, those terrible energy prices at the last administration, they trace directly back to his boss. I know you're going to think this is completely random, right? His boss negotiating an awful deal in 2020 with OPEC and Russia. What? You're telling me that President Donald Trump is not a good negotiator? He's not a good negotiator, y'all. He negotiated an awful deal with OPEC and Russia in 2020, a deal that didn't expire until April of 2022 to throttle back production on oil globally. Let me introduce to you from YouTube, Greg Dudevoir. I believe that's how you pronounce his name.
Okay, thanks to Mr. Global, we can break this down simply. What is OPEC, and why does Trump's 2020 OPEC deal matter so much? First off, OPEC stands for Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. It's basically a cartel of oil-producing nation that coordinates how much oil gets pumped worldwide. So when OPEC cuts supply, prices go up. And when supply increases, prices go down. In April of 2020, the last few days of his first term, Dementia Don negotiated a deal with OPEC and Russia. Known as OPEC Plus, it was designed to slash global oil production by nearly 10 million barrels per day.
Thank you.
And then he bragged about it.
Yes.
Donald Trump negotiated a deal
That's right.
with OPEC and Russia to cut prices in April of 2020. At the same time he did this, oil prices collapsed because of the COVID shutdowns.
Right.
But here's the problem. That production cut didn't disappear when the demand came back.
Exactly.
As the economy reopened, oil supply stayed artificially low. Exactly what OPEC wanted. Because the prices surged. Higher oil prices means higher gas prices, higher shipping costs, Higher food prices, higher prices for literally everything. That's inflation, and it didn't just come from COVID. The 2020 OPEC deal locked in scarcity at the worst possible time, handing pricing power to foreign oil producers while Americans foot the bill. Trump didn't help lower gas prices.
Nope.
He helped create a delayed price shock that exploded later. And once inflation starts, it's incredibly hard to stop later. This is why energy policy matters and why short-term political wins can cause long-term economic damage.
1,000%. God, I feel like I've been saying this for 3 years. This show has been on for 3 years. We did launch it in 2022, right? The end of 2022. That deal lasted until April 30th of 2022. Inflation peaked in June of 2022 and began cooling after. Now, if you think that OPEC deal, that, oh, by the way, President Biden tried to get OPEC to rescind earlier and could not. It was an ironclad deal that President Donald Trump, OPEC, oh, and by the way, Russia involved in that. They signed in April of 2020, thinking they were saving the oil industry in the throes of COVID. Remember, because in April 2020, we weren't going anywhere. We weren't driving anywhere. Remember how clear the skies were because we weren't driving? All that smog that we usually see in the late spring and early summers of Atlanta was gone. It was gorgeous. You could see all the way to the Appalachian Mountains from Old Fourth Ward in Midtown. I know this because I had a 7-story condo where I could see all the way up to the Appalachian Mountains. I could see Kennesaw Mountain clear as day. No smog whatsoever. The Buckhead skyline, which normally I can see, but like, you know, if there's a little haze or fog or smog or whatever, clear as day. It was like almost I could touch it. April 2020, the Trump administration, along with OPEC, along with Russia, along with China, they all signed this deal to throttle back oil production to save the oil industry. The deal was for 2 damned years. Why? I don't understand why it had to be for that long in the first place. It should have been like a rolling 6-month deal at best, right? Nonetheless, that deal was signed for 2 years. It ended April 30th, 2022. And in the start of June, the June inflationary index numbers that came out showed that inflation began cooling about a month after. How many times if you listen to the show every day, how many times have you heard me say, that's not coincidence? I'm no economic expert, okay? I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy. College dropout. But I pick up on my cues, you know what I'm saying? I pick up on things, and that is one thing that I know. When oil prices spike, everything else price-wise spikes. And that is the case with the deal that Mr. Art of the deal negotiated back in April of 2020. This is one of the other reasons why I decided to start this show is because I feel like Democrats, again, this is me yelling into the void. Democrats, whether they're politicians, whether they're campaigns, whether it's the party, like they don't get the messaging right enough. Now, I know I've just spent 8 minutes explaining to you why oil prices and our gas at the pump prices and the cost of everything during the Biden presidency. But I was saying this back during the Biden presidency, too, okay? And it's as simple as saying, Trump negotiated this deal back in 2020. It lasted 2 years. When it expired, prices began to cool. I just did that in 7 seconds. Democrats haven't been saying this enough. They still don't say it. And that's why Vice President Mascara gets on Fox News and continues to harp on the cost of the last administration. When the last administration was hamstrung, handcuffed by a deal set into stone, apparently, by the Trump administration. Much like the deal that the Trump administration, version 1.0, signed with the Afghan government and the Taliban to release, 5,000 Taliban prisoners? Who, oh, by the way, rearmed and became a fighting force again and overtook the Afghan government, which made our exit a lot murkier than it needed to be. I mean, you can trace back so many things. Don't get me wrong. I have my quips and my quibbles with the Biden administration and some of the things that they did and didn't accomplish, right? But you can trace back the inflationary issue, the cost surge, the price spikes. And by the way, we had it a lot better off, as bad as it was, we had it better off than most of the rest of the world did. Thank you, Joe. But you can look at the inflationary problem and trace that right back to Trump. The lack of a vaccine rollout, trace right back to Trump. Thank you for the vaccine. I mean, your base hesitates to want it to use it, even though it's been proven to be effective. I mean, we ended the pandemic, did we not? I mean, take some credit. He didn't want any credit for it. There was no vaccine rollout for it. That was Joe Biden. You can look back to the Afghan withdrawal. That's another thing. That's one of the two big things that they hung around Joe Biden, like an albatross, was affordability. Again, back to 2020 OPEC deal, not signed by Biden. Biden wasn't in office. And you can go back and look at the Afghan withdrawal. That was the other really big thing that they kept targeting Biden with. Again, deals negotiated not by President Biden, couldn't be renegotiated by President Biden either. He got one extension on the exit from Afghanistan. When he sought a second, he was denied by the then Taliban-controlled Afghan government. Well, whose fault is that? It all goes back to Trump. And I feel like I'm screaming into the void. I need Democrats who are running for office, Democrats who are thinking about running for office in 2028, to start repeating this history factually and with more vigor, with more force, because it's not going to resonate if no one's saying it but me. Oh, and the random guy I found on YouTube that repeated that. I've shared this article so many times, and it's behind a paywall, unfortunately. So, but from the New York Times, oil nations prodded by Trump reach deal to slash production. The deal will reduce output by 9.7 million barrels a day. While significant, the cut falls far short of what is needed to bring oil production in line with demand. That's how low demand was back on April 12th of 2020 when Clifford Krauss filed that story with the New York Times. All right, give me just a second. I'm going to go back in time and sit at the table with the NewsNight Abby Phillip crowd on CNN last night. Fact is, I would love to sit at the table one night at Newsnight with Abby Phillip and whoever else is assembled there. It's something that I'd really like to do, so I'm going to pretend that I did this on Monday night's episode. Alongside Hal Lambert, CEO of a MAGA investment firm, Bakari Sellers, South Carolina Democratic Party former chair, Leigh McGowan, a.k.a. Politics Girl, Noah Rothman from the Heritage Foundation, Margaret Donovan, a former U.S. Army JAG, and Father Edward Beck from Manhattan University. He is their chaplain. Abby, discussing the Iranian war.
Sounds like the talks this weekend were centered on what they always are centered on, which is whether Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon. The Times is reporting that Iran said that they would suspend uranium enrichment for up to 5 years, but the Trump administration rejected that offer. They insisted on a 20-year window. CNN is reporting as well that 20-year window. Margaret, does this sound like a negotiation that would result in a permanent taking off the table of nuclear weapons?
No.
I don't think so. I'm a little bit pessimistic that we can get to that. I think that we had as close as we could get in the JCPOA a few years ago. And I think any rational actor would say, forget about Iran, forget about geopolitics. Anybody making a deal with somebody else would say, why would I cut a deal with you? You just ripped up the one we worked so hard to do in the past. I think that it makes sense that it's going to be more difficult. Yep. I do want to say one point about the Strait of Hormuz. I think that's a little bit misguided to think that this is basically a bargaining chip, that Iran can now suddenly open the strait. I think that's actually totally impractical because we've learned that Iran has mined the strait illegally, by the way, and lost track of those mines, which means that it's basically impossible for them to reopen the strait. It's effectively self-blockaded.
Thanks in large part to our distracting them with our excursion.
We can blockade Iranian ports, but that only does so much when you have to get through the Strait of Hormuz geographically to begin with. So that's going to require a multinational coalition to actually demine the strait.
Yeah, the risk is there regardless, Noah.
There is obviously some mining in the strait, not nearly the degree to which we anticipated that there would in wargaming in this and in 1987-88 when they did. And their channels are in use. They're not mining their own traffic channels. So what happened over the weekend was, as these negotiations were ongoing, the United States introduced 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, clearing out their own strait, according to Brad Cooper at CENTCOM, introducing underwater drones to clear out these mines. So they're engaging, while the ceasefire is ongoing, in threat-clearing operations. And then on top of that, this very medium-risk but high-reward blockade strategy, which is designed to cut off all revenue to the about $450 million that they generate on a daily basis from traffic in and out of Iran. And it's just Iranian ports. So the idea is they have about 13 days worth of oil that they can store, at which point they have to start cutting off off their own oil generating plants and fields, and that is going to put a lot of financial pressure on this regime.
Yeah, but you rewarded this regime when you ended U.S. sanctions temporarily so that we could get relief at the gas pump so you wouldn't face the electoral consequences. We just gave them $14 billion. You think that $1.4 billion pallet of cash that Obama gave to get the JCPOA was a big deal? We just gave them 10 times as much so we'd feel better at the gas pump and mitigate the damage that's going to be done in the midterms.
At the start of the weekend, we were hearing that Donald Trump was ready to bug out, that he was done with this, he was looking for an off-ramp anyway, he was going to get it, he had to give away the store, and that's just not what happened.
Except he gave away $14 billion with that sanction relief I just mentioned.
But I think it also kind of puts us on a collision course with whatever the first vessel is that we're going to blockade, right? Because it's going to be some third-party country, and then we're going to have a showdown.
Pakistan.
So I think that's a very risky possible elevation.
Two Chinese we've already interdicted.
Yeah, so, right? I mean, I don't think we're going to be sinking Chinese ships.
But the Chinese also responded and said very clearly today that this is Iranian Strait. This is their property. They control it. The other thing is the two vessels that you talked about, we did send them in, but this goes to the happenstance portion of this war that we're in, because these vessels that we sent in, they're not even built to do the work that we sent them to do.
That's exactly right.
So when you're talking about, we sent in two vessels, I mean, of course, to the audience, it sounds good. And then you flip the page and you say, look, they're not even built to do this type of work. They don't have that capacity. They don't have that capability. And it goes to the fact that a lot of people watching believe that this is a war of happenstance. This is a war of how Donald Trump feels the next day. And the next day, this was not gamed out. You talk about war games. This is this is a game of checkers to him, where the rest of the world is playing some type of 3D, 4D chess, because we actually are losing this war.
The rest of the world's not playing at all. I mean, what are you talking about? They're playing 3D chess.
The rest of the world,
the rest of the world's not playing in this game, and
20%
it's not a
of the
game,
world,
by the way.
20% of the world's oil.
Yeah, but they're not
comes
involved. You're saying they're playing 3D chess. They're not involved in what's happening.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Because first of all, you do understand that sometimes when people decide not to get engaged in a war, that is an action. No. Acquiescence is an act.
They don't have the ability to get engaged. So
wait one second.
Europe doesn't have a military.
But did you not? Let me ask a question. Did Donald Trump? One second, because you're beating me up on this point.
1 second.
Did Donald Trump ask for help on the Strait of Hormuz?
Yes.
And did they not say no? The rest of the world, they said we're not engaging in that. And by taking that act, by acquiescing and saying we're not engaging in that, they are leaving the United States alone. That by itself is an act.
Okay.
Iran is not a conventional negotiation adversary.
Neither are we.
They're just not. They have a martyrdom mindset. Okay. They've been doing terrorism around the world for 48 years.
Right.
They're not interested in negotiating. They're interested in stalling.
Yeah, but what they've learned about us now is that any agreement that we have with them could go away by the time the next president or ideologue comes into office that doesn't like that deal. Why should they negotiate with us?
Because what they want to do is drag this out, play the media in the United States against the Trump administration,
for crying out
and
loud.
hope that they can win that way. And that's what they want to do. Trump's not going to let them do it. This is going to have to be resolved much more quickly. He's not going to play these negotiations that go on weeks and weeks and weeks. Just like he did in this time. He said, nope. Day into it, we're done.
I think that you're partly right about the Iranians feeling like time is on their side. But I think the question that I have is, what is the or else? You said that Trump is not going to allow them to drag out the negotiations. No. Well, we've already seen that despite the walking away and the drama of this weekend, they're still at the negotiating table with Iran. So the negotiations are kind of dragging out.
But the or else is no more oil revenue.
That's what's about to happen. What is the...
They're going to shut down Iran's ability to get revenue. ...
After the $14 billion we already gave them when we relaxed our sanctions.
Wasn't the goal
hold on 1 second. Yeah. I mean, I think that might be the case, but they might also have to shut down all the oil coming out of the Strait of Hormuz.
And it's not just oil coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. It's fertilizer. It's helium. It's things that change the entire world economic order. Like, I think we have to be really serious. There's a reason that Bakari's making that the world is turning its back on us right now. That they're saying we need the help, and they're like, no, this is a problem you made on your own.
Yep.
China was very clear, saying this is a problem you made on your own. NATO leaders with like Keir Starmer coming out being like, we're not joining in your blockade because the U.S. can't make us manage their affairs. Canada's prime minister is like, you know what, we're not going to send 70 cents of every dollar for our defense to the U.S. anymore. This isn't making any sense. These choices that this administration is making doesn't make any sense, and they're causing a crisis in the whole world. You were talking about these ships that are in there.
But this has been the policy of every Democrat that's run for years.
I'm not talking about Democrats.
No,
I'm talking
you said
about what's
that we
happening in Iran right now, man.
Wait,
listen, here's
exactly,
the thing.
and we stopped them from getting a nuclear weapon.
These ships
that
and
was
how
the
they
goal.
don't have. Let me just finish.
Hold on.
No, they weren't.
These
They were
ships.
not
Hold on a second. Let's just do this one at at a time. Finish your
These
thought.
ships do not have, you said, the capacity or the capability to do the job
Correct.
that they've been put in to do. I believe that when we sent in the people to do the Iran negotiation, they did not have the capacity or the capability to do the job that they were meant to do. We sent in 2
Realtors,
real estate brokers and our vice president
please.
to do the negotiation.
true.
Then they left after 21 hours. The last deal, correct me if I'm wrong, the one that we had with Obama, it was 18 months.
Yep.
They worked out the deal.
Yes.
So after 21 hours,
Over a
J.D.
year.
Vance and Jared Kushner and Witkoff were like, well, peace out. We didn't get a deal.
and also cosplay Trump. You were sitting there shaking your head like, no, we didn't stop them. Yes, we actually did. Trump's very first Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, under oath said that they were fundamentally compliant with the JCPOA. And Trump unilaterally ripped up that deal anyway, which is why we are where we are right now.
Hal, a quick response and then Noah. Go ahead.
You're again blaming the United States. That's what your entire
We started
15,
the war. We caused the
minute
problem. The
diatribe
strait was
on-
open.
was
the
blaming the United
strait was
States.
open. Now it's closed. Yeah, it's our fault.
It's been the policy of every president that's run and won that we were not going to let Iran get a nuclear weapon.
And Obama accomplished it, which is why Trump ripped up the agreement in the first place. Let's just call a spade a spade. Anyway, that's me pretending that I was on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. It's the Ron Show. Georgia Now, Progressive Voice via Tune in. Back after this.
This is the Ron Show.
And in 2024, Democrats did not even field a candidate in Georgia's 29th House District. I know you're thinking, well, that's outrageous. There should be somebody running in every House district and every Senate. Yes, there should be. And it happens on the right, too. There are Democrat strongholds that Republicans don't even bother running against. So Georgia's 29th House District sort of hugs Lake Lanier. It is the western and southern and western end of Gainesville, heading southwest and hugging the lake coming towards Atlanta. Having a House district without somebody running on the party ticket does absolutely nothing to help the candidates up the ticket. For Attorney General, for Secretary of State, for Lieutenant Governor, for U.S. Senate. So for all the men and women running for those offices on the May 19th primary ballot, it's encouraging when someone steps up to say, you know what, I'm not only going to run to win that, I'm also going to run to bring voters to the polls on my behalf and yours as well. Up steps up a 27-year Army veteran community leader, Scott Soracco. Scott's originally from South Atlanta and for much of his life spent a fair amount of time, weekends, summers, up at Lake Lanier since the late 1960s. Graduated from North Georgia College in Dahlonega, served 27 years in the Army as an officer, assignments as a field artillery officer, including at Fort Hood, Texas, Camp Asayans in South Korea, and Fort Benning, Georgia. Deployed to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Following those excursions, what are we calling those now? Wars. He joined the Army Individual Ready Reserve, worked at Shearson Lehman as a Senior 7 registered representative and financial consultant in Buckhead. Army brought him back to active duty 3 years later, and he spent the next 6 years in Key West, Florida, coordinating a joint multinational drug interdiction operation. Joining me is Scott Soracco. First of all, did you stay up late last night to watch election results? What are your thoughts on the results of the Georgia 14th Congressional District?
It was definitely a big thing that I know most of us were watching and paying attention to. I think it's great. I mean, it shows that we're moving the needle forward. More and more folks are coming out and getting involved. And it's my understanding they've got to run again in November. So there's still time to re-engage and get even more folks to show up.
You're running in a House district that we didn't even have somebody on the ballot in 2024. And I spoke in the lead up here just how important it is for not just winning that House race, but also candidates who are up the ticket as well. There's obviously you're in the Senate district as well. So somebody running for that Senate district would benefit from having somebody down ballot bringing voters to the polls, as would it be for the Secretary of State candidate and Lieutenant Governor, and of course, John Ossoff running for his Senate seat as well. Do you feel yourself? I'm going back to your military service here. Do you feel yourself as something of a member of a unit that is working in collaboration to charge up a hill?
Yes. I mean, the reason I got engaged was I had looked at maybe going as an independent just to see locally what I could do as a commissioner in my town. Yeah. Turns out I'm not in a town. I'm not in Oakwood or Gainesville. I'm right smack in the middle of it's Hall County is the zone, but I have a mailing address for Oakwood. So they told me, oh, you can't run with us and you can't do Gainesville. And then you got Hall County, but the district I'm in for Hall County, that seat doesn't open up this year. It's about 2 more years away. And I had talked with the elections official, and I was like, well, okay, what can I do? And then I got a call from the Democratic Party. There was a PAC. It's called Fighting 50.
Yeah.
And their goal was to find 50 people to run against incumbents that had no one to run against in 2024. And my understanding is we found 70, I think we hit 72 people. And of those 72 people, only 3 or 4 have actually done this before. And the rest of us are all brand new. So we're all talking together and seeing what works in the districts across the entire state of Georgia. So there's still, I think it was 20 seats that we don't have someone to run against. So the Republicans have those, I guess, locked in. But the rest of us...
Yeah, the good news is there are districts like that on the opposite side of the spectrum as well. We're at least seeing... it's just good, I think, for voters to have options, period, end of story.
Have a choice.
Yeah, it sucks to show up to vote and you're like, wait, I only have the one candidate to choose? That's not democracy.
Yeah, it's not any fun either. I mean, like, why did I show up to the ballot box? And that's the biggest thing we're trying to do now is just get the word out that register to vote and show up.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your district. You've had a chance to canvass for a little bit. What is your sense of where voters' minds are? And I'm sure you've talked to left, right, and folks who don't vote at all.
Yep, I've come across all kinds. That's the fun part of this whole job is I've had a chance to meet so many people that I've never had a chance to run across before because, with the military of the 27 years and then 11 years FEMA working disaster management across the United States, I've met people across the United States, but not right here in town. I was like never home. So I've just had a chance to open the doors and meet a lot of folks. A lot of people are just excited that I'm running. I had one guy tell me, I am so glad you're running. Oh, praise the Lord that you're out there because you're making the Republican guys work for it. They're going to have to actually talk to us because they never talked to us in years. We never heard from the guy. They don't even know his name. However, you're going to lose. Oh, thank you.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Okay, so you're a Republican guy. I got it. But we're all working together. And even yesterday, I was out at the food pantry delivers food to the St. John's Baptist Church here in Gainesville. And I went out just to see how some of these community groups are engaging. And they've been doing this for years, every Tuesday.
Yeah.
So I had a chance to work and talk with the folks, even the folks that were picking up the food. A couple of them recognized me from their car. They said, hey, Soracco, hey. I'm like, that? Great. I guess I'm getting the word out.
That's fantastic. So the issues that matter to you that you can wield some effectiveness if you are happen to flip it, happen to flip this House district and wind up serving in the General Assembly next session. You mentioned you tout your background in long-term planning and how you can put that to use when it comes to education and healthcare access, even fiscal responsibility. Talk to me about your political priorities and how you can bring your background to work in that realm.
It all goes back to what is the challenge? What's the problem that we're trying to solve?
Oh, and where do we start? Where do we start?
Well, exactly. So we got to pick a few there.
Yeah.
But the background I have when it comes to planning just goes back to gather you have your assumptions, you gather your facts, and let's get rid of as many assumptions as we can so we can have the facts from all parties. It's not just what do the Democrats want. It's what does everybody think? Everybody has good ideas. And people keep seeming to have these ideas out there. But, okay, let's come up with options. Just like in military planning, you try to come up with 3 courses of action, sometimes more, and pick the best one. Okay, now you got to get a coalition, collaborate, coordinate, and try to execute on the plan. And that's the hard part is getting folks to move forward and on the political side. Okay, so the planning seems actually rather easy, but you have to look at the good and bad for every plan. So what are the things I'm looking at? Well, I have to keep reminding myself that as a representative in the state, I don't have federal authority.
Right.
So there's not a lot we can do about the big federal things that people are concerned about. Immigration, that's a policy that the feds have. The state, we can do things, but we have challenges. Okay, you have the data center and the challenges with that. Well, locally, what can we do? Well, one, you have the moratorium. The biggest thing is people can complain. We can use the judicial system. We can try to make some laws that requires action to have this kind of activity here. You must do A, B, C. Those could be put in place. All right. So, or what am I looking at statewide? Well, I'd like to look at the veterans side of the house, veterans issues with mental challenges. Once again, that's federal with VA. So I'd have to go up the chain and talk to the congressmen and senators higher up to try to get things. But Georgia itself, we could use funds to help out Georgia veterans because we have a high suicide rate.
Yes.
What can we do to help that alone? Especially with the VA cuts that have come. What was it, 30,000 people were let go from the VA?
Yeah.
So that's one of those things. Okay, I know everything involves money. So that's the fiscal responsibility. What are we going to spend? I keep hearing about we're going to give money back to the voter. Look, we've already taxed them. We've got some savings. I understand Georgia has like a $16 billion fund.
Surplus,
That's nothing compared to Florida. I've done disaster management, and these states, some of them have a lot of money saved up, and others are very poor states, and I don't think they have more than 1,000. They don't have a whole lot of money. But Georgia has some savings. I agree with lower tax rates. Let's lock it in at 3%. But we can't get rid of income and we can't get rid of property tax. We got to pay for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing is the healthcare. So veterans issues, if we can work on veterans for mental, we can also use that. Those same folks could also be helping with civilians. There's no reason why you can't, do both.
Mm-hmm.
We refer veterans all the time to civilian hospitals. Let's look at education. I keep hearing that they're funding education. It's fully funded. But what does that actually mean? Does that mean that if we need the state's portion of education is, let's just say 100 million, and the state decides to budget 50 million, and they vote to fully fund the 50 million, is that what they mean? It's been fully funded?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, teacher raises. I hear we give teacher raises. Well, they get a cost of living allowance raise, I understand. But where's the additional 10 to 20,000?
Mm-hmm.
I believe we need to give a raise to teachers so that they want to come to Georgia, so we can pick some of the best teachers that we want. And because of the pay that they get, they stay. A lot of teachers leave after 3 to 5 years, is my understanding.
So, I mean, you're talking a lot in a fiscal realm there, but like in Georgia, we've had so many headlines garnered in the last few years when it comes to how much helicoptering over teachers since they have the book lists questioned and their curriculum questioned. Do you think that that's also a deterrent for folks that want to come teach in this state who might be coming from another part of the country where they don't experience that sort of hyper scrutiny?
Yes, I think that's also an issue. And we have the Board of Education that's elected, and they hire the superintendent, and the superintendent hires the principals, and it all starts back at the top.
Yeah.
So we have to work on that. Who is this Board of Education, and where are they getting their ideas from? I understand in some states they're actually banning books that we read in high school and lower school.
Right.
The state actually passed a law about cell phones in schools.
Right.
I disagree with the state getting involved locally. That's why we hired or elected the Board of Education with the superintendent and principals. Why are we taking their power away from them? There's a school just down the street here in Gainesville. 2.5 years ago, they, on their own, stopped the use of cell phones. They said, no more cell phones in class. It took a week to implement it, and they have had no problems. They didn't spend any money on, some kind of Ziploc bag or locking the phones up or none of that. It was just, don't use the phones. But we spent our General Assembly's time to pass a law. We're taking the power away from the locals. Come on.
There does seem to be some sort of I've noted the hypocrisy as well, especially when it comes to those on the right who don't like federal overreach, but they're okay with state overreach as long as they're in control with the state.
Right. Now that takes us into healthcare. I believe in your right to choose the healthcare whatever activity you want, and that opens the door for this whole abortion thing. I don't believe that the state should pay for it. If that's something that you need to have done, that's between you, your medical advisor, and your values.
Right.
It's not for the state to come in and make these laws that affect your life.
Right.
They don't know. So I'd like to see that law go away. Or if we can't make it go away, let's just make some more changes to it to be a little better, because we do have people going through severe strife and challenges that need a medical action taken just to help them stay alive.
And your thoughts on Medicaid expansion? The state has long been dragging on that.
I say we need to vote for it and make it happen. I think there's 10 states. We're one of them that hasn't approved it.
Yeah.
Just south of Atlanta, if you go south of Grady Hospital, the hospital that was down there called South Fulton near the airport, it's shut down.
Yeah.
So we have nothing going on there. And that could be a major challenge.
Mm-hmm. You touched a little bit on tax relief and data centers. Those are hot button issues. I want to take a quick break and come back and wrap that conversation with you, if you don't mind. We are with Scott Soracco, who is running for Georgia House District 29, which in and of itself you would think, okay, it's another. But this House district had no Democratic candidate running in 2024. That in and of itself is an improvement. We'll continue that conversation when the Ron Show returns. Back with Scott Soracco running in Georgia House District 29. No opposition on the primary ballot, so he'll be there in November and running against a candidate who won the seat outright because nobody ran against him in 2024. So that would be Matt Dubnick, who now has an opponent on the November ballot. Encouraging, just that you're doing that. And again, bringing voters to the polls who may otherwise not have come to show up. It all works upstream to help out the party's lieutenant governor candidate, the candidate for governor, secretary of state, of course, John Ossoff on the ballot as well. So thanks for doing that. That's doing a little bit of the heavy lifting for the rest of the party ticket. We talked a little bit about tax relief. Did you watch much of the General Assembly session in person? Did you come to the Gold Dome and watch any of the antics in action this last session?
I was able to make it down for 2 separate days.
Yeah. So you noticed how the Republicans tried on a couple of different realms to lower income taxes. Burt Jones wants to eliminate them altogether. How the House wanted to focus on property taxes. And in both cases, the Republicans sort of tipped their hands. They didn't, the devil's in the details. They didn't offer a lot of details on how they were going to make up for the revenue. And then towards the end, we started saying, oh, it is going to come via consumption taxes. So you're going to pay more in sales taxes to cover for property taxes that only the more well-off are going to benefit from. The income tax cuts is, again, the same thing. The more well-off are going to benefit from, while everybody who is paying for goods and services, disproportionately affecting the working class and the poor, we're going to have to pay more. How does the General Assembly, or how do politicians under the Gold Dome deal with lowering income tax rates or property tax rates without it affecting consumption taxes? Or is that the problem with the design in and of itself?
That's the problem with the design in and of itself. I mean, we really don't know how much money the sales tax is going to bring in until they raise it, and then see how that affects people's personal spending.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had some folks tell me everybody needs to pay the same. Well, right now they do, but if you raise it to 20%, yeah, that poor family has to choose even more, because that's a big increase. You start doing the math of 20%, you spend $100 on food, it's now going to be $120.
I'm glad you're having that conversation on the ground with voters who I mean, you would think on the surface, oh, it's fair that everybody pays the same, but it's not. I mean, the reason a progressive income tax exists is because those who do better benefit more from solvency of state and solvency of federal government. They get more. It's like I liken it to homeowners insurance. You got a nicer house, you're going to pay a higher insurance rate. That to me is the foundation for a progressive income tax.
Exactly. Now let's look at the sales tax for a moment. How much of that, let's say you live in Oakwood. How much of the sales tax that you pay in Oakwood goes to the city of Oakwood?
Not much.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
My understanding, I had met with the mayor and their city manager, Bureau White, and what he told me was they get half of 1% of the sales tax that you pay in their city. And that's it. But they generate a lot of sales tax. Well, first of all, who authorized only the 0.5%? Well, that's voted on by the General Assembly.
There you go.
They decide how much the city's going to get. Is this true across the whole state of Georgia? Oh my gosh! You find a small town like Oakwood, and they've got to fix a culvert, and that culvert cost them over $500,000. That wasn't in the budget, when they came up with it last year.
Yeah,
they've got to find that money somewhere.
And there you.
So I asked,
and there you go. You've got the state holding on to a surplus, but the communities are, just hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, I guess, in some respects for them. You've tapped into what the state could be doing with some of that reserve, and that comes back to the community 1,000%. Oakwood, by the way, is one of those towns where DHS swooped in and decided they wanted to put take a factory and turn it into a detention facility. That seems to have riled up a lot of folks to participate, voter registration, show up to meetings and whatnot. Have you been able to tap into that and gain some support for your candidacy that way?
It's hard to know about gaining the support for the candidacy, but yes, we've been showing up. We've the locals have protested it, and what the mayor and NPR White had mentioned to me was, protesting, complaining. That's the most we can do right now. Mm-hmm. Is get your voice out there and let the voice be heard. And we just need to call everybody and let them know what we're thinking. But it goes back to people ask, why do we need a detention center? We've been kicking the illegal immigrants have been taken out of the country for years. It went on in the previous presidential administrations. Right. They did it before, and they didn't have fancy detention centers. I understand they want to build 23 across the United States that hold 1,000 people each. What are they waiting for their court date? Where's the rest? Where's the transparency? Yeah. What is really going on? Well, and the Homeland Security hasn't even talked to the city officials. They haven't talked to the commissioners.
Of course not. Well, the other part of it is, like, there was a bipartisan agreed upon bill during the Biden presidency that the president would have signed that would have beefed up the sort of court backlog that you're talking about. It would have hired more immigration attorneys and added judges to the system so that they could be processed faster, whether they're here seeking asylum, here legally or here illegally. That all would have been taken care of, and instead of that. We had to scuttle that so that the current president could get elected again. They needed to have that cudgel as something of a political chip. And so instead of dealing with the immigration system that desperately needs updating and staffing better, we're just buying warehouses to hold people for longer. And as you mentioned, overburdening communities like Oakwood and Social Circle. The good news is, with Kristi Noem and now Markwayne Mullin in, there has been a little bit of a pencils down pause on all of that. So the showing up and the complaining that you keep talking about, it's all that you have right now, but it seems to have worked.
Right. And then the judicial system needs to be jumping in there to make sure that these folks are getting the proper representation, that they're authorized by whatever laws exist.
And look, and DHS has, like ICE and CBP, they've got funding. They've got 6 years of funding. They got that in the big, beautiful bill. So they could be reallocating instead of spending $145 million more for a warehouse than it's actually worth.
$75 billion. I mean, the challenge with ICE, you hear people say, abolish ICE, get rid of ICE. We've always had ICE.
Yeah.
It used to be inside Customs before they broke it out as a separate element inside Homeland Security. Mm-hmm. So they've always been there. The challenge we have right now is they expanded apparently so fast. It's their training and leadership that's lacking.
Yeah.
I mean, they obviously don't seem to be trained on dealing with protesters and mass people. They're driving around in rental cars, hanging with their guns hanging out the windows and open doors. Oh, come on. If you know where the bad guy you're trying to find lives, you go to the house with a warrant and you pick them up. You don't just snatch somebody off the street because of their color.
Listen to you talking. Listen to you talking about due process or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, funny. All right, so listen, I got about 60 seconds to wrap. Let's give somebody a quick summation. Again, you're running for House District 29. You're in the Gainesville Oakwood area that sort of hugs Lake Lanier. Again, running in a district that Democrats did not have a candidate before. So my thanks to you for doing that. We're going to add your website. It's voteforsoracco.com in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. My best of luck to you as you continue going door to door and doing that canvassing and getting folks aware that you've got a Democrat to run for in that House district. Scott Soracco, thank you for joining the Ron Show, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's your voice, your choice. Get out there and vote.
That's right. I appreciate your time, Scott. Hour number 1 in the books. Thank you so much for listening to The Ron Show. We air weekdays, 8 a.m., 4 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice via TuneIn or review podcast. Show notes, as always, at ronshowatl.com. Let's do it one more hour. All right. We'll reset and do it all over again.
From the heart of the city too busy to hate. A progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hour number 2 of The Ron Show Tuesday. Thank you so much for listening. Weekdays, 8 a.m., 4 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or review podcast. I was having some fun in the first hour, just a little 9-minute segment, but I'm going to spend a little bit more time pretending I was at the table last night on NewsNight with Abby Phillip. Guests included Margaret, Donovan, former Army JAG, Hal Lambert, Scott Jennings. He is the founder of Point Bridge Capital. Leigh McGowan, a.k.a. Politics Girl, Bakari Sellers, CNN commentator, former South Carolina Democratic Party official, Noah Rothman, senior writer with the Conservative National Review, and coming up later, Father Edward Beck from Manhattan University. He is their Catholic chaplain. I'm sure you can surmise why that guest will pop in a little bit later. But I'm pretending that I'm there at the table, too, because I have a few things that I want to add to the conversation that occurred last night on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. And by the way, if the Newsnight producers ever listen, I'm happy to come on. Let me go back a little bit. I want to let Hal Lambert finish making the point that he was making about Iran not being a bona fide negotiator, disinterested in negotiating, not worthy of being trusted as a negotiator, as we remind everyone that we had a deal with Iran that we ourselves backed out of, but they're the ones that can't be trusted in negotiating.
Iran is not a conventional negotiation.
Neither are we.
Adversary. Okay? They're just not. They have a martyrdom mindset.
By the way, this is where, Abby, I'll have to remind you, we're going to talk about Trump as Jesus, right? Okay, cool.
Okay, they've been doing terrorism around the world for 48 years.
Right.
They're not interested in negotiating.
But that's because Trump showed them that negotiating with the U.S. means nothing back in 2017.
They're interested in stalling. And that's what they want to do. Trump's not going to let them do it. This is going to have to be resolved much more quickly. He's not going to play these negotiations that go on weeks and weeks and weeks, just like he did in this time. He said, nope, day into it, we're done.
I think that you're partly right about the Iranians feeling like time is on their side. But I think the question that I have is, what is the or else? You said that Trump is not going to allow them to drag out the negotiations.
No.
Well, we've already seen that despite the walking away and the drama of this weekend, they're still at the negotiating table with Iran. So the negotiations are kind of dragging out.
But the or else is no more oil revenue. That's
sure,
what's about to happen.
what is the? What do you mean no more?
They're going to shut down. They're going to shut down Iran's ability to get revenue.
Okay, but Hal, sorry, Abby. Hal, we actually loosened sanctions on Iran to give them more money because we wanted to lessen the impact of gas prices here in the United States. So we gave Iran $14 billion. You think the $1.4 billion, remember the pallet of cash that you guys on the right like to hawk about when Obama handed it over, to get to the JCPOA, that we had the deal in place that kept Iran from enriching uranium or having a nuclear weapon for the foreseeable future? I think it was 20 years for the most part. We just handed them 10 times that in oil revenue to by loosening the sanctions so that we could have friendlier bad gas prices here in the United States to lessen the political blow for your guy and your team.
Wasn't the goal nuclear enrichment?
Hold on one second. Yeah. I mean, I think that might be the case, but they might also have to shut down all the oil coming out of the Strait of Hormuz.
And it's not just oil coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. It's fertilizer. It's helium.
Yeah.
It's things that change the entire world economic order. I think we have to be really serious. There's a reason that Bakari's making, that the world is turning its back on us right now, that they're saying we need the help, and they're like, no, this is a problem you made on your own. Mm-hmm. China was very clear, saying this is a problem you made on your own. Mm-hmm. NATO leaders with Keir Starmer coming out being like, we're not joining in your blockade because the U.S. can't make us manage their affairs. Yep. Canada's prime minister is like, you know what, we're not going to send 70 cents of every dollar for our defense to the U.S. anymore. This isn't making any sense. These choices that this administration is making doesn't make any sense, and they're causing a crisis in the whole world. You were talking about these ships that are in there.
But this has been the policy of every Democrat that's run for years.
I'm not talking about Democrats.
No,
I'm talking about what's happening in Iran right now, man. Listen, here's
exactly,
the thing.
And we stopped them from getting a nuclear weapon.
We did.
Yes,
we did.
Let me just finish.
Thank you.
No,
These ships, hold on a second. Let's just do this one at a time. Finish your thought.
These ships do not have, you said, the capacity or the capability to do the job that they've been put in to do. I believe that when we sent in the people to do the Iran negotiation, they did not have the capacity or the capability to do the job that they were meant to do. We sent in two real estate brokers and our vice president to do the negotiation. Then they left after 21 hours. The last deal, correct me if I'm wrong, the one that we had with Obama, it was 18 months. They worked out the deal.
Yes.
So after 21 hours, J.D. Vance and Jared Kushner and Witkoff were like, well, peace out. We didn't get a deal.
How quick response to them now?
So true.
You're again blaming the United States. That's what your entire.
We started the war.
We did this.
Caused the problem. The strait was open.
Was blaming the United
strait
States.
was open. Now it's closed. Yeah, it's our fault.
It's been the policy of every president that's run and won that we were not going to let Iran get a nuclear weapon.
Correct.
Okay. And Trump decided to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. And now
Trump
everybody's
told us
up in arms on the Democrat
June
side.
that he had gotten rid of all nuclear weapons. It's still on the White House website.
And by the way, if Trump had been serious about that, then he would have just stuck to the JCPOA that his own Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, said that they were fundamentally in compliance with the agreement signed by President Obama, his predecessor. But because it was signed by President Obama, his predecessor, he could not handle that. And so he ripped the deal up. And so here we are. Thanks, Donald Trump.
Trump says he doesn't want Iran to ever have a nuclear weapon. But what we have learned about the negotiations this weekend is that just like the JCPOA, it had a time horizon.
Bloop.
So where does that leave us?
Well, I don't know how to evaluate those reports. And they are just reports described to us from sources inside the administration. And we've had a lot of reports from sources inside the administration that haven't panned out. It's a war, and it's not exactly clear what's going on. However,
I don't think they know what's going on.
First of all, 2 points.
So it's a war.
Hal's right unfortunately, about the British Navy. They dispatched a single destroyer to the Cyprus. It took 2 weeks to get there. They had to return it to port pretty quickly. The British Navy's pretty innervated. As much as Keir Starmer wants to posture, he does lack the assets to do this kind of operation. Second, the JCPOA allowed cascading centrifuges to exist. That's how they enrich uranium. Those are gone. What we have now are about 900 pounds of 60% enriched uranium. The idea is to squeeze them until they give it up. And they will engage in kinetic operations if Iran doesn't give up. But over the course of the ceasefire, they're hoping to.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I think the question that Abby asked was correct, and that was very exquisite. Thank you. But at the end of the day, one of the things that the JCPOA did, and you're smarter than this than I am, is they made sure that for 20 years Iran wasn't able to enrich nuclear weapons.
Yep.
For 20 years, that was a sunset period on it.
Well, there were several different
iterations.
Several different iterations of the time.
And you also had to kind of trust but verify, make sure you had inspectors go in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We actually had a deal in place.
That's right.
We had a deal in place.
That's it.
Whether or not, I think all of us around the table, contrary to what Hal may want to say, all of us around the table actually agree with the underlying premise that Iran should never have access to a nuclear weapon. Period. Nobody's debating that.
And we had an agreement in place that saw to that.
The point I'm saying is that right now, the Trump administration tore up the JCPOA, and what the American public are seeing is that they're over there negotiating for the same thing.
Right.
Well, there's just like an extreme lack of planning. So, to your point, like we didn't have a backup plan. Obviously, nobody anticipated that the Strait of Hormuz was going to be what it was. And just to the points about our ships and our capabilities, we actually decommissioned an entire class of minesweepers that the U.S. Navy had that was stationed in Bahrain.
Seriously?
And it left Bahrain months before this war started, which tells you that the Department of Defense was not properly planning for this, or we would have kept minesweepers in the Persian Gulf, but that didn't happen. So we can be non-proliferation, we can try to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon, but there are wrong ways to go about it, and I think there's been some wrong decisions made here.
All right, we've got to leave it there. Next for us, Donald Trump says that it wasn't Jesus he was depicting, it was a doctor. Why his actions are being called blasphemous and a work of the Antichrist.
Oh, good. I was hoping you were going to get to that while I'm pretending that I'm sitting here at the table with the rest of your pundits having conversations about global affairs. I am pretending that I was on last night's Newsnight with Abby Phillips. Just let me have my little pretend time here, okay, if you don't mind. So we'll come back, and I definitely cannot wait to tee off on the Trump as Dr. Jesus when the Rancho returns on Newsnight with Abby Phillips. On Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. If you're just joining the show, I am pretending that I am on the set last night at CNN's Newsnight with Abby Phillip. I just had some things that I wanted to add to the conversation, but it was a very fluent, very good conversation discussing all the ramifications and repercussions of this war of choice that the Trump administration has gotten the United States into with Iran and how that's affecting us at the gas pump and trying to blockade the Strait of Hormuz and trying to minesweep the strait that has been pilfered with mines that the Iranians admit that they've lost control of because they're a little more focused on being attacked by us. I mean, there's just been so much that we did not game plan for. Clearly, we as you heard Margaret Donovan, the former Army JAG, mention, we decommissioned ships from Bahrain just months before this. Planned attack that we had on Iran now that has us in this kerfuffle. So yeah, I hopped in the hot tub time machine this morning and went back in time and put myself on the dais there for last night's News Night with Abby Phillips. And the music's coming back. I think we're going to talk about Trump as Jesus.
Tonight, an uncharacteristic move by President Trump after significant blowback from both the left and the right. He's now deleted this AI-generated post depicting himself as Jesus. But according to him, that isn't the likeness of Jesus, and he's surprised that anyone would think otherwise.
It wasn't depiction. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And only the fake news could come up with that one. So I just heard about it, and I said, how did they come up with that? It's supposed to be me as a doctor making people better.
Okay.
But tonight, Vice President J.D. Vance had a different explanation. He said Trump is just trying to be funny.
Right. I think the president was posting a joke, and of course he took it down because he recognized that a lot of people weren't understanding his humor in that case. I think the president of the United States likes to mix it up on social media, and I actually think that's one of the good things about this president is that he's not filtered.
Abby, I'll say this much. J.D. Vance went from criticizing President Donald Trump for just these sort of antics to now knowing exactly how to respond to defend him while making it everyone else's fault that they don't get. We all don't get the joke. We don't understand his humor, and that's everyone else's fault and not Trump's. I'm sorry, she's giving me that look like I jumped the conversation. Sorry.
Father Edward Beck is here with us at the table. Father Beck, is this a funny joke? It seems like most people didn't take it that way.
Well, I think rightly so. What doctor have you ever seen with light rays coming out of his hands to heal someone, and rays from heaven coming down blessing him in red and white garments? I mean, the president, I think, is being disingenuous.
He thinks we're stupid.
Quite frankly, by saying he thinks it was a doctor's image he was posting. There's no Red Cross image in the photograph. There's an image of a nurse in a blue uniform, but nothing about the Red Cross. So I just think all of his comments did not follow what everybody else saw. And for J.D. Vance to say it was simply him being humorous, I think, well, which was it? If he was trying to be humorous, most people didn't get it. So basically, we're blaming people for not getting his humor.
Everybody.
And the liberal media for not getting it. I just think you always put the blame somewhere else, but why not just say, look, I made a mistake. I posted the wrong thing. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. I just think that would be more reasonable.
Because he deleted it, but then lied about it?
That's not who he is. I mean, I think we have to get to the point where we're like, when are the lies enough lies? When do the people of America who support this man say, this is enough lies? Like, quite clearly, everyone who's ever dressed up for Halloween knows if you're a doctor, you put on a white coat and a stethoscope. Like, that's the doctor costume, not the Jesus costume, which is what Donald Trump put himself out being. And it's putting himself in the place of God, not with God, in the place of God. I think the bigger issue here is that Trump's behavior from the whole week,
year or decade,
is that he's not mentally fit to be in this position right now. He threatened 90 million people with instantaneous death. He's terrorizing the world. He's ruining the economy. He's basically said we're going to get rid of a 6,000-year-old civilization. And then he went to an ultimate fighting championship game to wave at people, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Make-A-Wish presidency. I keep saying that. He's living the Make-A-Wish presidency.
Like, we can't pretend that this is okay, that America is the good guy in this situation. It's no longer even pretending that we represent freedom and justice or democracy in the world when we have this one man with unquestioned, unchecked power acting however he wants, and then we try and make excuses for it after the fact. It's too much, and we have to stop.
So, Leigh is not the only person describing Trump's behavior recently as erratic. And the Times put it all together in a piece that says Trump's erratic behavior and extreme comments revive mental health debate as the former president threatens to wipe out Iran, attacks the Pope. Even some former allies and advisors are questioning whether he's grown increasingly unbalanced, describing him as lunatic and clearly insane.
So, Abby, I know I'm a leftist on the panel here. Pretend I am. But my question is, how do you know the difference? Like, I don't see him acting any more or less erratic than he has in the last decade. This is the Donald Trump that we've all known. I why are we just now letting people come to that same conclusion when it's been obvious to the majority of this country for more than a decade?
And look, let's pretend that it's not Trump.
Mm-hmm.
If someone that you loved, who is in a position of power, like a CEO or something, posted something like that,
we'd have questions.
People would be calling and asking, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Well, I think what the reason Trump said that is because the person that originally posted it was, I think, February 6th. And he actually said he posted it because Trump is the doctor for the country. And that's why he posted it out there. Now, the image is obviously a problem, which is why President Trump pulled it down. But I believe President Trump probably didn't think of it as being Jesus at the time. He saw it as, I'm healing the country, which is what
you believe that.
No, I believe that. I definitely believe.
Hal, you believe that he was depicting himself as a doctor?
Well, that's what the original post was about, and so Trump retweeted it.
No, I believe, because I don't think Donald Trump knows who Jesus is.
Thank you, Bakari.
So I honestly believe that he was confused. I mean, but the fact that people can't call a spade, like this was sacrilegious.
Yep.
I mean, there were people who gave Barack Obama hell for a tan suit and a selfie stick.
Yep.
And you have somebody out here who's mocking Jesus Christ, and the Republican Party, GOP, they think they're God's only party anyway. They simply can't say our president messed up. And then when Riley Gaines, who I don't agree with on much of nothing, Jason Whitlock, who I don't agree with on absolutely anything, when they had the audacity to come out and chastise the president of the United States, he chastises them back.
But he pulled it down. When you say he won't admit it, he did pull it back down.
But who is in charge of the man who's in charge of the free world? If he can put out things and then be like, whoops, we can't have someone in charge who can do that. He needs to at least have a team around him that can stop him from putting up the wrong
He's the president of the United States. He can put whatever he wants up.
That's the issue.
You're not in charge. You can't tell him what to do.
That's the attitude in the White House.
But that's he can't.
No, go ahead.
That's the problem.
No, go ahead.
I'm confused pushback, though, that he did it. It stayed up for 13 hours.
Well, I'm just saying, she keeps saying, who's going to stop him from doing this?
Well, I think
the military.
Stop him.
No. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. You've been trying to jump in. It's like double dutch around here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm just confused as to what the New York Times is identifying as being odd behavior here. I mean, this is precisely how he's behaved for the last 8 years, 10 years. If you ask Republican voters back in the first term, the first thing they tell you they don't like about Donald Trump is the tweets back when it was Twitter.
Right.
The tweets. You can't count on 15 hands how many times his social media has gotten him in trouble, and yet he can persist in part because this is something
But don't you think
it's not okay. It's just a feature of how he is, and I wish they had a more disciplined comm shops.
I think you're right. Like, look, there's a polling earlier this year. 61% say that Trump doesn't share their values. 64% say he does not have the right temperament to be president. So you're right. Americans see him for who he is. But I think the issue,
Republicans don't like that too.
The issue right now is on the importance of the things that he's sending these messages about. It's not just calling his political opponents names. He's threatening to wipe out a civilization in the middle of a war. And then he's getting into a tit for tat, which we'll talk more about in a little bit, with the Pope, and then sending out an image that even his own supporters are saying, don't do that. I mean, Riley Gaines' comment was, a little humility would serve him well. God shall not be mocked.
He has none.
It's the why. It's the stuff that he's doing it on that makes a difference.
I do think there's a little.
Just let Noah respond, please.
Well, I actually don't have much to say. I think everybody's right. I think Riley Gaines is right that we wish the president would exercise a little bit more discretion. He cannot do that. He refuses to do that. And then folks like J.D. Vance come around and say, well, this is what's best about him. It does fuel his ego in ways that
But I also think that we're not clearly acknowledging the fact that it's getting worse.
You think?
And I had a great aunt, Jenny Marie. She was the matriarch of our family. And she was 88 years old and still driving. And then she used to come to church and park in the front. And then the day she hit the pastor's car, my dad had to go take away the keys, right? Because it just progressively got worse.
Is this going to be an Article 25 discussion again? You guys have been talking about Article 25.
No. So I have two concerns. One is that the president, I believe, lacks discernment, and I think that's getting worse. The second thing is you won't call a spade a spade. And the fact that if you can't call what he did sacrilegious, which is clearly the definition of sacrilegious, I think that would be my second problem.
Well, obviously, I wouldn't have posted it out there, and I think President Trump realized he shouldn't have pulled it down.
But can you be critical of him?
I also
sure. I don't think he should have posted.
But why not apologize? Why not admit I did something?
That's a very good question.
I think part of it is in politics, when you start apologizing, you run into problems. And I think that's the issue.
That is not
Certainly
okay. Just to be clear.
But in Christianity, when you start apologizing,
hold on a
you
second.
actually hope
just to be clear, it is not true that in politics, when you apologize, things start to go wrong. That the only person who believes that is Donald Trump, and he is wrong about that. In politics, it is okay to acknowledge mistakes. That's actually what most politicians do. The fact that Trump doesn't do it is not it's not a virtue, Hal.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not a bug to MAGA. It's a feature, Hal.
And why, by the way, is it that Trump needs to post something first, see the backlash to realize that it was wrong?
13 hours later.
Well, as was said, he's been posting now for 12 years.
Yeah, but does he have the judgment to know that it's wrong before he posts it?
I think he does. I mean, this was done at 3 in the morning, I think. So
what was going on at 3 in the morning at the White House?
Right? It's cool. Like he posts this thing where he's dressed up as Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now, going to war with Chicago. He thinks it's cool.
But also at 4
His
a.m.
fans shouldn't
But
kill
also
him.
at 4 a.m. on Easter Sunday, he was also posting about committing a genocide. Like you can't decouple them. And all I'm saying is when you look at them together. And when you look at them, not in exclusivity, but together, you have a president of the United States who is getting older by the day.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show.
Heard weekdays 8 a.m., 4 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn. And no, I was not actually on Newsnight with Abby Phillips last night. But you know what? Again, CNN producers, Newsnight producers, Abby, if you're listening, happy to come on at any point in time and provide some of that wisdom and wit that I interjected when I hopped into the hot tub time machine to join you for a couple of segments for today's show. If you didn't know this, Vice President J.D. Vance will be in North Georgia today. He's headed to the University of Georgia as part of the White House's effort, the Politically Georgia AJC team writes, to sell younger voters on President Donald Trump's agenda. The younger voters that are draft eligible? And to inject fresh MAGA energy into Georgia's top races just 5 weeks before the nationally watched primary. The Athens event is part of Turning Point USA's Traveling College Campus series. Is Erica coming too? Oh, reunited, and it feels so good. Comes with a clear political overlay. Trump-backed Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones is expected to speak before a large crowd of students eager to reinforce his MAGA credentials as he wages a bruising, high-dollar battle with billionaire healthcare executive Rick Jackson. Other top GOP rivals are notably elsewhere. Jackson has a Savannah stop. Attorney General Chris Carr has a long-scheduled fundraiser, and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger agreed months ago to participate in a Leadership Atlanta forum. The stop also comes at a politically delicate moment for J.D. Vance himself, a likely 2028 presidential contender, after a rough stretch on the international stage. Yeah, I'll say, let's see, the negotiations with the Iranians in Pakistan did not go well. He stumped for Viktor Orban in Hungary. That did not go well. His approval numbers, by the way, J.D. Vance. CNN actually did a segment on this. Let me give you that.
J.D. Vance not helping out an ally of his abroad.
Kate was talking to Congressman Don Bacon from Nebraska yesterday, who said it's really unusual for overt political activity from a president or vice president campaigning for a foreign leader there. Is this the type of thing you think, based on the polls, that Americans want to see?
No, I was already shaking my head but when you were asking the question, because the American people want the focus to be here domestically, not abroad. Just take a look this. Take a look here. Look at this. Trump admin is focusing too much on foreign matters. 58% of Americans believe that the Trump administration is too focused on things abroad. What they believe also is there's been too little focus on domestic matters. Look at this. 60% of Americans believe there's been too little focus on domestic matters. Now, of course, the Iran war is part of this, right?
Yeah.
But this is just part of a larger picture, the belief that the presidency and the administration of Donald Trump in his second term They have taken their eye off the ball. They are looking abroad when Americans want them looking at home. And, of course, J.D. Vance going and campaigning for the prime minister of another country that is pretty far away from here is just part of a larger picture that the American people dislike.
Yeah. So Vice President Vance, how's he doing? How popular?
Yeah, J.D. Vance is not doing too hot to trot at this point. Look at this. Okay, J.D. Vance's net popularity, this should actually be a plus. There we go. Plus 3 points. Then we go to minus 18 points at this point. Ooh. That is a 21-point swing in the wrong direction. J.D. Vance started off his vice presidency in plus territory, and now he is in negative territory. Down he goes. J.D. Vance getting dragged down along with the President of the United States.
Where does he run? Maybe along with, maybe because of that we don't know that. But where does he rank among other vice presidents?
Yeah, you look at other vice presidents. Look at this. At this point in their vice presidency, historically the worst at this point in a vice presidency. Kamala Harris was at minus 13. Mike Pence was at minus 7. Joe Biden was at plus 4. Dick Cheney was at plus 37. This might be part of a longer trend of vice presidents becoming unpopular, but we can say J.D. Vance is historically the least popular vice president at this point in their vice presidency.
Yeah, that is notable. It may just be a thing where Americans over time, we just hate everything.
Yeah, I'm not going to be dismissive of that thought that could actually be the case, but still, J.D. Vance in the clubhouse at under 18 under par. There's my master's lingo coming out, right? Anyway, back to the AJC piece chronicling J.D. Vance coming to Athens today. His recent stops include a failed effort to bolster Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, a MAGA ally who lost his election in a historic landslide. And, by the way, Orban conceded. That's unique for MAGA. And high-level negotiations in Pakistan that failed to reach an accord with Iran. You know what? To be honest with you, I have to give credit where it's due here, or a little pass anyway. It's really hard to anticipate coming out with something as good or better than the JCPOA that took, 18 months to negotiate? In a matter of 18 days or 6 weeks since we've gone into this military excursion with Iran. And by the way, every time we think we're negotiating with folks, we wind up bombing a level of officials that we were negotiating with. This is all just chef's kiss brilliance, right? The AJC reporting that UGA's Young Democrats chapter plans an afternoon protest outside Aikens Ford Arena. That's where the Turning Point USA event is happening, right? Let me point out, by the way, that is not on the UGA campus. That is in downtown Athens, a few blocks from the UGA campus. So that's not exactly a campus event like Turning Point USA is known for. Anyway, they plan to protest outside Aikens Ford Arena, timed to his arrival, and party chair Charlie Bailey called it a, quote, clear warning sign that Republicans are nervous, especially as the president's approval here continues tanking, adding, with every single Republican candidate for Senate and governor embracing the failed Trump-Vance agenda, we'll make sure they do not make it into the higher profile come November. Now, turning this back to the Georgia gubernatorial scrap that is the mudsling between Rick Jackson and Burt Jones. Rick, of course, a little later to the MAGA bootlicking line. And I'm fascinated to watch this as Trump and Vance's numbers continue to tumble, as the effects of the Iranian war continue to harangue the American economy, as these two continue to fight to see who's more MAGA-ier. I'm just kind of watching this from the sideline and going, why are you hitching your post to a horse that's failing? Back to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Patricia Murphy writing a piece yesterday. What do you get when you cross a billionaire with a millionaire in the Georgia GOP primary for governor? In 2026, you get a daily, almost hourly deluge of negative TV ads, mailers, and billboards from billionaire first-time candidate Rick Jackson and millionaire Burt Jones, the lieutenant governor who looked like Republicans' presumptive nominee for governor until Jackson unexpectedly jumped into the race. Avoiding the sludge will be almost impossible for Georgia voters, with nearly $90 million in ads reserved between just those two campaigns through the May primary. And look, we still have a month and 5 days of it. Sorting out what's true from what's not may be the best a Georgian can hope for until the storm passes. I might also add, by the way, for Georgia's Democratic gubernatorial candidates, 35 days is all you have. Where are your TV ads? And yes, they're going to get lost in the shuffle, but you've got to cut through some kind of way, right? Jason Estevez got ahead of that. We don't know what his campaign coffers look like right now. We won't find that out until April 30th. That is still 16 days from now. And placing a 3-week ad buy, or actually it'd be, slightly less than 3-week ad buy. I would argue, if you believe, however, you're in good shape to make the runoff, you make that buy with confidence. It is curious, though, right, that no other Georgia gubernatorial candidate has dipped their toe into the TV waters with, again, just 35 days left to go. I mean, are they all just sitting back thinking, does Thurmond think? I don't know, like, what their internals are telling them. There's not a whole lot of polling other than the AJC poll with UGA back in November, the Emerson College poll at the beginning of March, and the 2020 Insight poll that we got just a few weeks ago. And they all tell only one thing consistently, that Keisha Lance Bottoms is in position to be in the runoff if the numbers hold. Everything else is completely up for grabs. We don't know. Will it be Keisha versus Jeff Duncan? Will it be Keisha versus Mike Thurmond? Will it be Keisha versus Jason? None of us have any idea what that looks like right now. The Estevez camp, I will tell you, they're flying high. They're feeling really good about momentum. And maybe that polling shows momentum. There are questions about the crosstab because we haven't seen them. There are questions about the validity of it. But it's the cutting through part that I think is, again, we're 35 days out from May 19th. If there are other candidates who are serious about winning this race, other than Jason Estevez, and I don't know how long his ad buy continues. I haven't seen it. I haven't watched much local television in a while anyway, but is it still running? Let me get back to Patricia Murphy writing about the Rick Jackson, Burt Jones flooding the airwaves. Even that won't be easy. In the last week, Jackson has continued his onslaught of ads against Jones, accusing him of self-dealing, while Jones has called Jackson a false prophet and posed with a literal bottle of BS in South Georgia, saying he had finally figured out what Jackson is selling with his campaign. I've got audio of this.
I'm down here in Douglas, Georgia, at the world-famous JMC Tire Company around here. I'm with Mr. John right here, and I finally found what Rick Jackson is selling down here. I want y'all to look at that right here, because it's pure 100% right here what it says right here. So, yeah. Thank y'all.
It was seasoning. Yeah, the label says bullshit big ranch, a division of Disparity Ranch. Okay. Back to Patricia Murphy, who writes, did I mention this is a campaign for governor, not social chair of a fraternity house? The BS that Jones is referring to is a hurricane of attack ads from Jackson that accuses Jones of pushing for state laws or regulations from his role at the Capitol that would benefit his family businesses around the state. We've all seen those ads, right? A well-publicized example came when Jones lobbied for a bill in 2023 that will make it easier for one of his family businesses to build a new hospital in his hometown. Another Jackson ad hits Jones for a plan from the same business, Interstate Health Systems, to build data centers next to the hospital, an accusation that Jones says is all made up. My opponent has spent literally $20 million trying to make you believe that I own a data center or my family owns one or whatever, Jones said, showing a video of an empty field that he said is the property in question. It's just lies, lies, lies. Murphy writes, the truth is that Jones does not currently own a data center on his family's property in Jackson, but Interstate Health Systems filed a very real rezoning application in 2025 to modify that proposed use for the massive mixed-use development, quote, to consist of approximately 11 million square feet of data centers, along with medical office space, a hospital, and assorted commercial businesses. Jones' spokesperson said that it is Rick Jackson, not Jones, who is heavily invested in a data center in Texas, and that there is not currently a contract for a data center on the Jones-owned property south of Atlanta. It could, she said, eventually be used for something other than data centers. But the application makes it clear that the plan makes way for data centers if they come. Patricia Murphy writing, Jackson has been stung by Jones ads, too. One of the most blistering attacks on Jackson has a toe dipped in fact, but it is also not what you'd call the whole truth. The attack started with a social media post from Jones in March accusing Jackson of making his fortune, quote, recruiting for Planned Parenthood and, quote, helping doctors perform transgender procedures on minors. A subsequent TV ad from Jones said Jackson, quote, helped staff gender transition procedures on prisoners. That enraged the anti-abortion, anti-trans Jackson so much he filed a defamation suit against Jones the next day, calling the lieutenant governor, quote, a desperate man who ran out of honest options. Like Jones, Jackson has called the attacks on him a, quote, stone-cold lie. But the ads are making enough of an impact that Jackson was recently asked about them by a voter at a campaign stop in Winder. In almost every lie, there is a scintilla of truth that wraps around that lie, the voter said. So what is the scintilla? Jackson explained that the jobs described in the Jones attack ads were posted on locumtenena.com, a free self-service job board like monster.com, that Jackson Healthcare operates for healthcare jobs around the country. His company does not screen or get paid for the ads, but Planned Parenthood has used the job board to advertise at least 2 openings, while Washington State's Department of Corrections once posted an ad for its chief medical officer. The second job ad is relevant because it is the root of the Jones TV ad about transgender prisoners, since Washington State has provided transgender medical care in its prisons since a legal settlement required it to do so. Oh, yeah, the Constitution sort of provides for that, too. But was Jackson really getting rich, quote, staffing transgender surgeries, the question asked. There's 0% truth to that at all, Jackson said in Winder. It was totally made up because I guess some polling person said that that would be great. We'll pick up on that when the Ron Show returns. Can I just tell you that at least on the left, when we're having conversations within our primary about who we're going to vote for, and I've mentioned what my thought process, right? Why I'm voting for who I'm voting for, and it's more about strategery and planning for the November general and who comes away with less baggage, yada yada yada. And internally, there's conversations about who met with or who has ties to AIPAC or who has ties to Israel, and how do Palestinian American voters feel about that? Or who has ties to Cop City and who doesn't? Who has to deal with the baggage from their role in office as DeKalb CEO or Atlanta Mayor? Like there are, okay, and obviously the big elephant in the room, literally elephant, former elephant, I should say, in the room is the former lieutenant governor who has his name affixed to, whether he likes it or not, laws that are in place and on the books now that the rest of the slate can say, we're all having to work hard against that now, and now you want to work against it too, but you were in a role where you could have, stopped it then and didn't. And so anyway, we're having philosophical policy conversations, and then you look at the Rick Jackson, Burt Jones, food fight on the right, and it's like, okay. How do American voters, how do Georgia voters look at these two sides and go, it's a toss-up. I don't know who I'm going to vote for. I don't know which party I align with. Oh, my God. The problem on the right is that they eat this stuff up and love it. And even if the person that they prefer doesn't win, they'll eventually, their seething rage, their hate for anything not MAGA or anything, deemed liberal, libtards, gotta own the lib. They'll coalesce behind the candidate that they're not even crazy about. Whereas on the left, we have these Jill Stein-like types that these hold their nose types. I mean, there are literally people who are like, anybody but insert name. I will not vote for insert name if he or she is the gubernatorial nominee for the Democratic Party. I know that. I know that that's the case, and I know. In particular, one candidate who that is going to be a tough slog for, that's why it's like, I cannot. God bless him, I cannot. And I'm just holding my breath and, fingers crossed that if it comes to a runoff with Keisha Lance Bottoms and whomever, that's what worries me about the Jeff Duncan candidacy. And I believe him. I believe him when he says that, he's sacrificed a lot. He's endured a lot. His family has 2 threats from, for the kids at school. And I'm sure that they've been ostracized and cut off by, folks in their social circle. I get that. He has 1,000%. He has sacrificed a lot. I just kind of at this point wish, like, with all the money that he's got in play, apparently, but we don't see in TV ads, all the money he's got in play, I would have loved to have seen a state Senate run to help flip that chamber in the legislature and, put in a little work in the General Assembly under the Gold Dome to make the case for that next gubernatorial run, whether it's 4 years or 8 years from now. It would have been a strong one, would have been a healthy one, a very strong one. The Democratic Party is the party that, eventually accepted Robert Byrd, the former Klan segregationist racist who, turned over a new leaf. The NAACP mourned him when he died. Democrats are willing to forgive and willing to welcome in the prior enemy, the former enemy, in due time, but you gotta put in the time. Also, Robert Byrd never ran for president, I don't think, as a Democrat. Pretty sure. I don't remember that ever happening. Anyway, back to the Rick Jones, the Rick Jackson, Burt Jones food fight. Patricia Murphy continuing to write, it's no mystery why Jones and Jackson are going after each other the way they are. There's only one ticket out of the primary, and they've both come too far to turn back now. But the danger for them and for Republicans in general is that regardless of what is true and what isn't, the Jackson and Jones campaigns seem hell-bent on destroying each other, even if it kills them both, which I guess, this is me talking, not Patricia, I guess is the thought process for the Brad Raffensperger and Chris Carr camps. Just sit back and let Godzilla and King Kong fight it out. And when they topple onto each other, we'll just kind of meep along. I mean, it's 35 days. I feel like time's running out. I don't see a whole lot of, I'll say this. I've seen some Brad Raffensperger TV ads. I think I saw one for Chris Carr. But the ad buys have got to be tiny, infinitesimal, because again, Rick Jackson is self-funding himself. He's crossed that $50 million threshold already, and we're not even past the primary. So naturally, he's going to blow past that. And Burt Jones has the fundraising advantage, but because Rick Jackson has stepped up and has gained momentum, I have to imagine that fundraising advantage has been somewhat nullified, or at least muted. Patricia Murphy writing, voters I talk to want to hear what the candidates are for, not just who they're against. But that's not coming through for most Georgians right now. I guess with the exception of, there he is, that one Democrat running a TV ad campaign right now. Jason Estevez is talking about what he's for. He's not slinging mud. He's just looking like the, younger, millennial father, businessman, husband, who happens to be a Democrat who worked in middle school as a teacher, teaching hundreds of kids there, and then got into the Atlanta Public School Board, chaired the public school board, then the state Senate. I mean, he's running the anti-Rick Jackson, anti-Burt Jones TV campaign right now. And then you got Brad Raffensperger running the anti-trans rhetoric that, it's been 2 years since the 2024 cycle. I feel like that's a little tired, a little played out. If somebody's going to run that GOP gubernatorial campaign that, if King Kong and Godzilla all fall out and, kill each other, where's the what we're for positive messaging campaign? This is where the GOP just has not been able to. All they can talk about is tax cuts and demonizing trans people. And, we can also talk about, I guess, Sharia law. Throw that in, right? Other than that, what do they have to run on? Trump gave his endorsement. It's going to Burt Jones. It's staying with Burt Jones. So if those two monsters fall off the cliff into the receding rage with each other, so does the Trump endorsement. Patricia Murphy finishing this piece. Instead, in the battle of bottomless bank accounts, the arms race of negative ads between Jackson and Jones is veering toward mutually assured destruction. If you've ever studied history, you know nobody wins in that scenario, and that's the truth. And that's, I guess, the strategy of Attorney General Chris Carr and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. But their profiles are so low that you have to think that the only winner, if it's left down to those two, comes down to Chris Carr, I guess, because there's enough MAGA resentment for Brad Raffensperger that they won't vote for him. And is there enough never Trumper Republicanism, Brian Kemp Republicanism. He's too busy shilling for Derek Dooley for U.S. Senate to weigh in on the Georgia gubernatorial race. I still think it's Rick Jackson's race to lose, but I don't know. I've been saying for weeks now, the ick in Rick, the ick factor is definitely there. But Burt Jones doesn't exactly provide a thirst-quenching alternative to that, does he? I know y'all hate the negative ads, but I'm enjoying this. The popcorn is warm. Anyway, that'll do it for today's Ron Show. I want to thank Scott Soracco for joining me to have a conversation about his House race. Show notes, as always, at RonShowATL.com. We air weekdays 8 a.m., 4 p.m. at Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. That's where you can find me.